and Ms. Stephanie Endres for post 5. What we're going to do tonight, since their opposition didn't show, we will ask them both the same question and get their perspective for both seats. We've got Mr. Cleve Gaddis here this evening, who's going to moderate. Maybe. We're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. There you go, sir.
How is everybody tonight?
Great. Good.
Great. Good. Do we have comments already?
No.
Do you have a problem with the way we're handling the debate so far? Is there... So this is going to be a little bit unusual. The plan was to have both candidates for each one of the posts, and unfortunately that did not work out the way we had intended. But let me open by saying, first of all, thank you very much for attending and being involved in the election process in the city of Johns Creek. I hope that it will make everything better in the future for our city. Not necessarily that things have been bad for the past 10 years, but there's a lot of stuff that we need to do, a lot of important decisions that are going to need to be made in the next 10 or 15 years, and I have to admit, I don't actually envy the people who have to make those decisions, and I do appreciate, I think, same as everybody in the audience, I appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to stick your neck out there and run and try to make a little bit of a difference. The election day is Tuesday, December the 1st. Early voting is open from November the 16th through November the 25th, which will include Saturday the 21st, so they'll have Saturday voting as well. The debate format is going to be fairly simple. We're going to ask each one of the candidates the same question. We'll start with one candidate, then we'll start with the next candidate for the next question. They will get 2 minutes to answer the question. If you need a little bit more time, we're not going to be very strict with our time. We were supposed to last 2 hours if we had all 4 candidates. Since we only have 2 candidates, I'm thinking that maybe 3.5 or 4 hours. Makes better sense. I can't keep going. I was thinking we'd probably try to, what was that? Was that from this side of the room? Hatcher, was that you? I'm thinking it will probably try to do maybe an hour's worth. I think that probably will be about the right amount. We'll sort of play it by ear and see. If I have any follow-up questions, I'd like the opportunity to be able to ask those follow-up questions, although I'm not sure that I will have any. So again, for post 2, Chris Coughlin, that is for a 4-year term. Post 5, Stephanie Endres, that is for a 2-year term, if I understand that correctly. The questions for tonight's debate came from some of the questions asked in the first debate, where the JCCA board added some to the questions. We also got some from the community. So we will start each of you, allow each of you to make an opening statement. In fact, Chris, if you will start, we'll start with you.
Sure.
If you could use the microphone there on the table.
Well, first off, thank you for coming out. I do think this will be not so hard of a challenging debate tonight since my opponents aren't here. But I do want to talk to you tonight about efficiency and effectiveness in the campaign trail that I ran. On the outset of my campaign, I decided it's commonplace for people to spend over $100,000 or about $100,000 on these campaigns. So I wanted to challenge the status quo, and I wanted to show what real fiscal stewardship could be. So the first thing I did was refuse all contributions. I wanted to show that hard work, a sound policy and platform, and good research could trump mailers, robocalls, and things like that. So the second thing I did was set a self-imposed spending limit. I signed an affidavit that I wouldn't spend over $2,500. I was told that this was idealistic, quixotic, and given it was at the time. But like I said, I thought a sound policy would show more to the citizens of Johns Creek than the mailers and the robocalls and the signs. And so now I think it's been a success. I got to the runoff by spending about $2,400. And I think that shows a hard fiscal stewardship, that we can do things a different way. My opponent has spent approximately $50,000, so it was about $1.97 that I spent per vote versus about $25 per vote on his campaign. So I think challenging the way we do things might work, you know, and I'd like to bring that to the dais. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and I too say thank you so much for coming tonight. You know, this has been interesting. This is our 4th debate, and so our 4th forum. And you know, I'm running because I've lived here for 17 years, and that 17 years has been before and after Johns Creek. And I truly am committed to Johns Creek, and I love our city. And that's why I'm running. I want to preserve and protect our residential identity and our quality of life. And I've been going to council meetings for 6 years following the process and have learned a lot. And now I'm going to take my 25 years of experience in financial accounting and blend that with that 6 years and my 17-year history in the city and hope to be able to represent the citizens' needs and concerns as we move the city from a startup to a governance. And I truly am committed to focusing on our quality of life and maintaining our residential identity, because that's why most of us moved here. And it's most critical to almost everybody I met through this process. I truly have enjoyed my time on the campaign. It's afforded me opportunities to meet neighbors I otherwise wouldn't have met, and I've actually made new friends. And been to areas of Johns Creek I've never seen before. And the great thing I think about being on city council is that we are all neighbors, and so we should be able to have these discussions. We may have differences of opinion, but in the end, we're all concerned about the same thing: our residential identity, our quality of life, and living together as a city. And so I'm excited to be a candidate for Post 5, and I would like to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, if you want to just hang on to the microphone, we'll start with you for the first question. And the question is, what specific business tax changes would you propose that will help make Johns Creek a more attractive destination for businesses?
I definitely want to look at the occupational tax that is charged right at the beginning. We make it very difficult to do business in Johns Creek for small business owners. And small business owners are our neighbors. Many of them, I believe in the economic development plan, it talked about the number of employees that most of the small businesses had were under 10. And so I think we should make it very competitive for them. So I'd look at the occupational tax. I'd also look at all the filing fees and requirements that the small businesses have to file. They're reporting revenues monthly and paying a tax on that. And so I think it's worth looking at and comparing. I did a study looking at the taxes, licenses, and fees between Johns Creek, Milton, Alpharetta, and Roswell. And I think there's opportunity there for us to bring a lot of those down to be more competitive so that they can function they can use their money to function in their business versus giving it to the government, and then be more competitive with our neighbors so that some of their citizens will be coming to Johns Creek to do business.
For those who might not know, can you give a little explanation of what an occupational tax is?
So on January 1st, for a business, they have to pay tax on the number of employees that they have, basically. And that fee, depending on how that calculates, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars right up front. And that's in essence like a registration fee. So you start in the hole from day one for the calendar year.
Thank you. Chris, would you like me to ask the question again, or?
No.
Okay.
I got it. So, like Stephanie was saying, we tax on gross revenues, and this is not conducive to small and startup businesses. It's not conducive to business growth. It creates tax pyramiding, where the same dollar is taxed multiple times. It unfairly taxes different industries. So, and we also tax on headcount. We tax on profit margin. We tax on administration. So, we tax businesses just to file their taxes. So we charge them $150 just to process the paperwork. So I'd like to reform it to either a flat occupational tax or a net income tax. I joke that when we tax on gross revenues, the federal government taxes businesses better than we do, and then that's a problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chris, if you want to hang on to the microphone, we'll start with you on this question. And this is a very broad question, so you might need a little more than 2 minutes to answer. Feel free to take that time if you need it. Question is, how do you envision Johns Creek in 5, 10, or 20 years? What is the role of our city government in getting to that vision?
Well, so there's kind of 4 major tenets I think that the city should handle, and that's infrastructure, police, fire, and parks and rec. And currently everyone knows our quality of life is mostly impacted by traffic. So what I would like to do is ease the congestion. We have accrued the $54 million surplus. Currently, we just made acquisition of land that took away about $20 million of that last night. So now we're down to about $34 million, but the remaining of that above an actual adequate reserve amount should be about $20 million. I'd like to allocate that now to capital improvement projects, those highly prioritized traffic relief projects. So I hope in 5 to 10 years, we're going to retain that residential community that we have, but without the traffic, And if we can reform some of the business taxes, some of us can get jobs here rather than commuting elsewhere. So I'd like to see it quicker too, in 5 years rather than 20 years.
Do you need a question again, Stephanie?
Yep.
Okay.
So, in 5 years, I would like to have seen traffic dramatically changed. I think we need to focus on our infrastructure so that we can flow in and out as citizens, even on the weekends, to be able to get to and from our house, just to the grocery store. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I have to plan my grocery store trips early in the morning or in the afternoon. Because even on the weekends, it's harsh to have people passing through. And then 10 to 20 years, once you get the traffic situation, transportation situation, in more of a steady state and you have a plan for the future, then organically I would believe that business would be able to start coming here, whether it's small business or larger businesses. It's just we have things for larger businesses to come here. We don't have the infrastructure for like airports or busing. We're that far from Georgia 400 to 85 or 85, and it takes a pretty long time to get there. So these are some limitations that we have that make it difficult for larger businesses to bring their people here or corporate headquarters here. But I think we can then focus on that once we take care of the infrastructure, just being able to get through the city. So in 10 to 20 years, I would see us having more of a vibrant business environment, but I still see us as a residential community unless the community decides to change that. And so I believe that the government shouldn't be directing who should be coming to our city, that would happen organically, and that that should happen just from the structure and culture of our city as it is at that time.
So both of you, and just a follow-up question, both of you mentioned transportation. You'd like to see ease of traffic. The majority of the roads in the city that have the majority of the traffic are state roads, not city roads. So what would be some of the ideas that you might have for easing congestion and having cooperation with the state to sort of solve a problem that's really outside of our control? If you don't mind, Stephanie first, and then Chris, if you want to answer as well.
Well, in all the council meetings that I've seen, it is a fairly easy process for the state to deed the road over so we could do the work if we could pay for it. I think one of the keys to doing some of the transportation fixes is that we fund it ourselves. When we go for state and federal grants, we're tied to whatever those grant purposes are, and then we're tied to the timing of getting the dollars. So I think if we sat down and focused on which roads needed to be widened, where were opportunities for potentially reverse flow lanes. I mean, these are some of the things that we really need to look at and see where our improvements need to be, what opportunities we have, and then go from there. But I personally believe if we fund it ourselves and can control the dollar, we can also control who's doing the work and how much we spend versus having X number of dollars as a grant, and so you want to spend the grant. So, and then you have all the strings that are attached to those grants, which have their own costs and components as well.
Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly here with Stephanie. I think also too, when we do have the state do it with those specific arteries, they don't expedite it quickly as we could. So if we do pay for it ourselves, we could get the ball rolling at a quicker pace. So there are opportunities to negotiate with the state and perhaps show them that the specifications that we would like in our own city might be best too. So I think using negotiation to the state might be good as well.
Great, thank you. Stephanie, starting with you, this question is similar to, this actually is further to some points you made in your original opening statement. The question is, should our business taxes be reduced to be more aligned with those of our neighboring communities? You've already said yes, that probably should take place. Can you give some more specifics on that? And if we made some changes to the business taxes, do you have an idea of what type of gap that would leave and how we might fill that in, or whether or not we need to?
I haven't really dug that far into it because I think the topics really are looking at where our opportunities are to change and then seeing what the ramifications are. Because of course, if you do reduce taxes, you're definitely going to have less revenue coming in. But the flip side is, I've also looked at the expenses, and I think that there are opportunities where the dollar isn't necessarily being spent right the first time, where we could also at the same time might be able to reduce revenues, but I think that there's a flip side of being able to reduce expenses from the city's budget.
Got it, thank you. Chris?
I agree wholeheartedly here with Stephanie. I think also too, when we do have the state do it with those specific arteries, they don't expedite it quickly as we could. So if we do pay for it ourselves, we could get the ball rolling at a quicker pace. So I believe we only bring in about $4 million in occupational taxes a year, so that's about 8% of our budget. Like I was alluding to earlier, we approved a $54 million surplus. We run about a 12 to 14% surplus every year. So we could put a moratorium on business taxes and still have it covered. So when I'm asked how would we pay for it, we wouldn't have to. We could cut every single business tax tomorrow and still have a balanced budget. Do I think that's a good idea? No, I think businesses need to pay their fair share, but I would reform it to a flat occupational tax or a net income tax.
Thank you. The next question, and I think it is it you, Chris? I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around the prop. I apologize. These questions were given to me and they're starting to repeat themselves, so we're starting to skip around so we don't cover the same stuff over and over again. And this question, both of you have given an answer to this. This focuses more on values than on who we are going to be. In other words, not who we're going to be in 5 years, but who are we today, and how is that going to help us get there? And the question is, what values should Johns Creek hold dear as the city moves forward?
I'd like us to retain a kind of a residential community that has parkland and is safe and has good schools. That's kind of why I'm opposing the district. I think if we move into almost an economic stimulus,